Did you know that FEMA has the authority to use your emergency stash if things get really bad? Yes, it's true. They can just come knocking on your door at any given moment. But wait, how do they even know you have a stash in the first place? Look, there's no shame in wanting to be prepared, but in today's digital age, every click online leaves a footprint. You're researching the best ways to build a bunker, downloading guides on long-term food storage, stocking up on canned goods. All that browsing feels private, right? Think again. Every search term you type in, every prepping guide you download, it's like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs. FEMA, along with maybe a few other curious agencies, might be taking notes on your online activity. If your browser history looks like the syllabus for a Doomsday Prep 101 class, you might be getting more than targeted ads for water filters. You might be getting flagged as a potential resource, someone with the knowledge and supplies to help out in a worst-case scenario. It's not a bad thing necessarily. After all, being prepared is a good thing, but it's important to be aware that your online activity might be putting you on FEMA's radar. We all love a good barbecue, right? Burgers sizzling, good company, maybe a little too much potato salad. But listen, this might not be the best place to brag about your apocalypse-ready bunker or that impressive stockpile of freeze-dried everything. Sure, your friends might be impressed or maybe even a little scared, but here's the thing. Walls have ears, and sometimes those ears belong to someone who might just pass on that information. Think of it this way. If word of your prepping prowess gets back to someone with connections to FEMA, well, you might as well have sent them a handwritten invitation to your prepper palace. Here's the bottom line. Keeping your survival strategies under wraps is generally a good idea. Unless you want your meticulously planned preps to become public knowledge, or worse, land you on a FEMA database, it's best to keep things on the down low. Next time you're itching to share your survival wisdom, well, maybe just talk about the weather instead. It's a safe bet, and honestly, everyone always has something to say about the weather. Besides, wouldn't you rather have that generator as a surprise for yourself and your loved ones after a disaster, rather than everyone in the neighborhood knowing you have it? Think about it this way. Discretion is key. You wouldn't advertise your expensive jewelry collection at a crowded bus stop, would you? Your emergency supplies are just as valuable, and keeping them a secret can ensure they're there for you and your family when you need them most. Now, I'm not saying you have to become a social recluse, but maybe avoid getting into too much detail about your preps at casual gatherings. There's a difference between sharing a few basic tips with a close friend and giving a full tour of your doomsday bunker to a group of acquaintances. Use your best judgment, and remember, a little mystery can go a long way when it comes to disaster preparedness. Now, the generator. Imagine a world where flickering lights and dead cell phones are a distant memory. A world where you're in control of your own electric haven, surrounded by the comforting hum of self-sufficiency. Sounds pretty darn tempting, right? That's probably what you were thinking when you unboxed that powerful new generator at the home improvement store. But here's the thing. Buying a generator can be like setting off a flare to FEMA that says, "Hey, look at me, I'm ready to go it alone." It can be a bit dramatic, sure, but hear me out. In FEMA's eyes, anyone dropping a significant chunk of change on a generator isn't just prepared, they're super prepared. They're taking concrete steps to become completely independent, and that can raise a few eyebrows. Think about it. FEMA's job is to assist people in need after a disaster strikes. Part of that involves knowing who might need the least help. So when they see a record of a generator purchase tied to your name, it might make them take note. It's like declaring independence in the digital age. And while self-sufficiency is a noble aspiration, remember, it also comes with a bit of a spotlight. In today's world where constant connectivity is the norm, choosing to disconnect from the grid can make you stand out like a sore thumb in a sea of obedient data points. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy a generator. A reliable source of power in a disaster can be a lifesaver. But just be aware that this purchase might put you on FEMA's radar. Step into a gun shop, and you might feel like a kid in a candy store. Except, of course, this candy can really pack a punch. But here's a thought to dampen that shopping spree enthusiasm. Every time you swipe your card for a new firearm or box of bullets, you're essentially signing a guest book that might get read by more than just the friendly shop owner. It's not just the receipts you're collecting with those purchases, it's attention too. And FEMA, Well, they might be one of those keen-eyed readers keeping tabs on who's stocking up on firepower. Now listen, I'm not here to tell you what you can and can't buy. Self-defense is a right, and a reliable firearm can be a valuable tool in the right hands. But here's the thing. Purchasing firearms and ammunition, especially in quantities that would make even the most enthusiastic hunter raise an eyebrow, can land you on a list that's less about VIP access and more about, well, let's just say FEMA might take a keen interest in getting to know you better. Think about it this way. Gun shop records are meticulous, detailed, long-lasting. Imagine every detail of your purchase, the type of firearm, the caliber of ammunition, the quantity, etched in stone rather than scribbled on a receipt. That information can be powerful, and in the wrong hands, it could paint a picture of you that might not be entirely accurate. Look, survival isn't just a staple for the cautious anymore. It's become a bit of a beacon for those curious about who's prepping for the worst while hoping for the best. When your shopping habits scream, "I'm ready for anything," it's like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for anyone interested in tracking preparedness levels. FEMA, with its mandate to manage emergencies, might take a particular interest in those who appear most prepared to ride out a storm solo. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not expecting an invitation to your apocalypse dinner party. It's more about noting who might not need to be first in line at the grocery store when the forecast looks grim. Buying survival food might make you feel like a Boy Scout, always prepared. But it also might make you a point of interest in a database concerned with resource allocation when things get tough. In a nutshell, stocking up on long-lasting food can ensure you're eating well in an emergency, but it might not keep you quite as under the radar as you'd hoped. Listen, I get it. Being prepared for anything is a powerful feeling, but there are ways to be self-sufficient without attracting unnecessary attention. Here's the thing. Stockpiling a mountain of freeze-dried meals might seem like the ultimate solution, but it's not exactly subtle. FEMA isn't the only one who might notice your, shall we say, enthusiastic purchases. Nosy neighbors, well-meaning friends, or even that chatty cashier at the grocery store could start to piece together your prepper persona. Instead, consider a more discreet approach. Focus on building a long-term food supply that blends in with your regular grocery shopping. Invest in some high-quality, long-lasting canned goods, beans, tuna, and vegetables. Learn how to rotate your pantry stock to ensure nothing goes to waste. And don't forget the importance of basic food preservation techniques, like canning and drying fruits and vegetables. By incorporating these practices into your routine, you can build a solid food stockpile that keeps you prepared without raising any eyebrows. Imagine this. You've snagged a beautiful waterfront property, perfect for serene mornings with a cup of coffee on the porch, watching tranquil sunsets paint the sky. Sounds pretty idyllic, right? Well, here's the catch. Your little piece of paradise might also be smack dab in the middle of a designated flood zone. And FEMA, well, they have a little map that likes to color properties like yours a bright blue, the universal symbol for flood-prone. Owning a property in a flood zone isn't just about potentially having a soggy lawn every few years. It means you're developing a first-name basis with FEMA, especially when it comes to discussions about flood insurance and local planning initiatives. See, FEMA's interest in your real estate in these zones isn't about the charming architecture or the lovely garden you've nurtured. It's more about ensuring you're not planning to build a modern-day Atlantis and get swept away in the next big storm. Being in a designated flood zone ties you to more than just nature's whims. It connects you to a network of policies, plans, and precautions that can feel as thick as a novel. You might find yourself attending mandatory flood zone meetings, navigating complex insurance options, and maybe even having to raise your home a few feet to comply with regulations. Now look, living near water can be pretty darn amazing, but it's important to be aware of the potential risks before you take the plunge, pun intended. If you're considering buying property in a flood zone, do your research. Understand the flood history of the area, the specific risks involved, and the regulations you'll need to follow. There are ways to mitigate the risks of flood zone living, but it takes planning and knowledge. The good news is being prepared can also help you stay off FEMA's radar. If you can show them you've taken steps to protect your property and yourself, you're less likely to be seen as a potential burden in a disaster situation. So you've decided to build your dream home. Maybe a sprawling ranch in the heart of Tornado Alley, or perhaps a cozy cabin nestled on the scenic slopes of an active volcano. Sounds exciting, right? Well, get ready for some serious paperwork. Submitting building permits in these thrill-seeker locations isn't just about choosing the perfect paint colors and flooring. It's about getting up close and personal with FEMA, because they take a special interest in ensuring your new abode won't become a real-life Dorothy and Toto situation, swept away by a tornado the first time the wind picks up. Building in a high-risk zone isn't just a construction challenge, it's a regulatory tango with more steps than your average disco. FEMA, along with local authorities, will want to scrutinize your plans with a microscope to ensure they meet a labyrinth of resilient standards. These standards are designed to keep your house standing tall and you safely tucked in bed, no matter what Mother Nature throws your way. Listen, I get it. Building your dream home from the ground up can be incredibly rewarding. But when you choose a location in a high-risk zone, you're trading some idyllic scenery for a whole lot of regulations. Now, these regulations aren't meant to be a nuisance. They're there to keep you safe. But be prepared for a lengthy permitting process, potential construction modifications to meet safety codes, and maybe even a few visits from FEMA officials just to make sure you're not building a house of cards in tornado territory. Here's the good news. Even if you're drawn to the excitement of a high-risk zone, there are ways to make it work. Talk to experienced builders familiar with the specific regulations in your area. Research the types of construction materials that are best suited to withstand the unique challenges of your chosen location. By doing your homework and partnering with the right professionals, you can build your dream home without raising any unnecessary red flags with FEMA. They say location is everything, right? Well, when it comes to disaster preparedness and FEMA's radar, your address could hold more weight than you think. Choosing to live smack dab in the middle of Hurricane Highway or right next door to a critical dam might offer dramatic views and a convenient commute, but it could also land you in FEMA's little black book, or at least their massive database. Residing in a disaster-prone area or near vital infrastructure isn't just about living life on the edge. It's an open invitation for more than just the occasional FEMA pamphlet in your mailbox. These high-stakes locations make you a person of interest in the eyes of emergency management because, well, you're literally living where the disaster action is most likely to happen. Whether it's the constant threat of shaking ground from earthquake faults, rising floodwaters due to proximity to a river, or just being a stone's throw away from a power plant, your address does more than determine your pizza delivery zone. Listen, I'm not here to tell you where to live, but when considering a new home, it's important to be aware of the potential risks associated with the location. Living near a fault line might be scenic, but it also means you'll need to take extra precautions to ensure your home is earthquake resistant. Choosing a home near a critical dam might offer easy access to a lake for recreation, but it also puts you in a potential flood zone. The good news is, even if you find yourself drawn to a high-risk location, there are ways to mitigate the danger and potentially avoid raising a red flag with FEMA. Research the specific risks associated with your chosen area. Talk to local authorities about any existing mitigation plans or safety precautions. Most importantly, ensure your home is built to withstand the potential threats of your location. By being proactive, you can create a safe haven for yourself and your family, even in a high-risk zone. Ever thought about joining your local community emergency response team, or CERT? It's not just about a snazzy vest and a walkie-talkie, although those are pretty cool, I admit. Participating in CERT is your backstage pass to the world of disaster preparedness. And FEMA might just take notice. Here's the deal. If you're actively involved with CERT, FEMA not only knows your name, but they probably have you on speed dial. Being part of this team means you're not just ready to tackle the next big emergency, you're also on the front lines, playing a starring role in your community's safety playbook. Engaging in these programs shows FEMA you're serious about disaster response. And let's be honest, they love that kind of dedication. Think of it like joining an exclusive club, where the membership fee is your willingness to dive headfirst into helping out when things go sideways. Sure, you might think it's just about learning how to properly use a fire extinguisher or manage first aid scenarios, but it's also a signal to FEMA that you're potentially turning your volunteer badge into a long-term commitment, which I'm sure you are, but hey, transparency is key. Now look, I'm not saying being on FEMA's radar is a bad thing. In fact, it can be pretty darn helpful. They might be the first ones to offer resources and support when disaster strikes. But if you're looking for a more discreet approach to preparedness, being a shining star in your local CERT program might not be the best strategy. Here's the good news. There are plenty of ways to be prepared without putting yourself on the FEMA A list. You can focus on building a well-stocked emergency kit, learning basic survival skills, or even taking a first aid course. These activities help you become self-sufficient and prepared without attracting undue attention. So you've transformed your basement into a hybrid of a Red Cross warehouse and an outdoor sporting goods store. First aid kits stacked to the ceiling, hand crank radios lined up like dominoes, enough fuel to launch a rocket, and enough water to fill a small lake. Your preparations might make you feel like a survivalist superhero. However, this impressive inventory could also make you a person of interest to FEMA, who keeps a watchful eye on folks who stockpile like it's going out of style. Here's the thing. When your shopping habits suggest you're planning for a full-blown apocalypse rather than a weekend camping trip, it might raise a few eyebrows. Buying in bulk has its perks, but it also might signal to FEMA that you're the neighborhood go-to person in a crisis. Not exactly ideal if you're trying to maintain a low profile. Listen, I'm all for being prepared, but there's a fine line between having a well-stocked emergency kit and turning your basement into a panic room. Here's the key. Focus on building a practical stockpile that meets your specific needs and the potential threats in your area. You don't need a lifetime supply of freeze-dried everything. Although, hey, no judgment if that's your jam. Focus on the essentials: non-perishable food, water purification tablets, a first aid kit, a good flashlight, a battery-powered radio, and basic tools. Rotate your food and water supplies regularly to ensure they stay fresh. Learn basic survival skills like first aid and water purification. By building a smart and practical stockpile, you can be prepared without becoming a beacon to FEMA. So, you're buying gold and silver bars like they're going out of style. Filling your safe deposit box with shiny ingots, feeling like a modern-day pirate with a treasure chest full of wealth. Hey, there's nothing wrong with wanting to secure your financial future. But here's the thing. This love affair with precious metals could also be drawing a bright, shiny line straight to your doorstep for the authorities. Opting for bullion over bonds can sometimes send a glittering signal that you're expecting some serious economic turbulence, or maybe you just really believe in the whole pirate aesthetic. But while accumulating these precious metals can feel like a wise move against inflation or currency devaluation, it might also paint you as someone with a vault worth noting, which could attract unwanted attention from folks with badges and clipboards. The savvy investor, however, might consider less flashy forms of these commodities. Scouring yard sales for gold jewelry or snagging silver trinkets at flea markets can camouflage your intent to build a store of wealth that doesn't wilt the Wall Street's whims. This way, you're a more eccentric collector and less bunker-building prepper in the eyes of the outside world. Look, there are ways to invest in precious metals without looking like you're prepping for the apocalypse. Consider exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, that track the price of gold or silver. These allow you to invest in these metals without the hassle and potential scrutiny of storing physical bullion. So, you find yourself a regular at the bank, making withdrawals large enough to make the tellers do a double take. You might be picturing yourself as a modern-day treasure hunter, but instead of buried gold, you're accumulating stacks of cash, likely under your ever-so-slightly lumpy mattress. This love affair with paper money, while reminiscent of a bygone era, might not be as inconspicuous as you'd hope. It can signal to FEMA and other curious onlookers that you're keen on dodging the digital eye. These frequent cash excavations might have them wondering, are you planning to buy a small island off the coast of Belize? Or are you just deeply distrustful of the digital dollar? Either way, moving money around like a character in a heist film might spotlight you as someone who prefers the old-school cloak-and-dagger approach to privacy. While there's a certain charm to being the mysterious cash-only kind of person, remember, in today's digital world, this can make you stand out more than blend in. Listen, I get it. Maybe you don't trust the whole digital currency thing. Maybe you just like the feel of crisp bills in your hand. But when it comes to disaster preparedness, being a cash hoarder isn't exactly the most discreet strategy. Here's the good news. There are ways to access your money even in a disaster situation. Consider a prepaid debit card loaded with a specific amount you can use in case of emergency. Talk to your bank about alternative withdrawal methods in case of power outages or limited internet access. By having a plan and exploring alternative options, you can ensure you have access to your funds without looking like you're prepping for a bank heist. The government can actually interfere with a lot of things once things go sideways. In fact, click the video on screen now to learn about the 11 surprising things the government can legally take from you.